Hey guys, Matthew here. With Mythic Plus being out for a few weeks now, I want to throw up a Mythic Plus guide video to give you guys a good idea on how to perform pretty well in keys as a Shadow Priest in BFA. So, let's just get started. To begin, I want to just briefly talk about the changes to keys in BFA, which some of you may already be familiar with. The major one is no more gear swapping during a key, which really is disappointing given how it limits the potential min-max that has been introduced with Azerite traits. Secondly, the Tyrannical and Fortified affixes begin at +2 now instead of +10. In their place, there is a new seasonal affix. It's my understanding that a Mythic Plus season is essentially a content cycle, so this cycle's affix is Infested and will last until 8.1. Infested is an affix where some mobs in the dungeon are, infested with spawns of G'huun. The infested mobs in the dungeon are the same for every key during that week, before the configuration changes. I'm not sure if it's random or if there's a few set configurations week to week. When infested, a mob gains an aura that heals any nearby mobs for 10% of their HP every 3 seconds, including when they're mic controlled. So move them away if you're mic controlling for CC. The way to handle this is either focus the mob down quickly, or CC it and do the non-infested mobs first. When an infested mob dies, 2 spawns of G'huun spawn and begin to crawl towards other mobs attempting to infest them. Infest is a 1-second cast. The way to handle this is to stun and kill them before they reach their target. So, why should you want to play Shadow for Mythic Plus in BFA? What is it good at? Where does its weaknesses lie? To start, it's a very good burst AoE toolkit, which is a significant improvement from Legion where we had nothing. Shadow's utility in terms of Purify Disease, Dispel Magic, Mass Dispel are also strong, since many dungeons in BFA require dispels both offensive and defensive. Shadow has decent CC talent options with a shorter silence CD, a single target stun, as well as a baseline AoE fear. For the record, Mind Bomb sucks. Vampiric Embrace is a nice ability to have also in 5 minutes. A big eruption with Vampiric Embrace active can save the group from a wipe. Also, Power Word Fortitude, I suppose. It's not the same as Arcane Intellect, but it's extra health. Unfortunately, the spec is not without weakness. Shadow has bad sustain and will often see a sharp drop off in DPS once the burst combo is done. Shadow also does mediocre DPS on 2-3 target cleave, which is a symptom of the bigger problem that also affects rating. That problem being that Shadow's single target sucks. You often find yourself competing very well on overall, but being 10 to 20% or more behind other classes when it comes to single target, especially if it's Tyrannical. Overall, I believe, despite the weaknesses, Shadow is in a much better spot than it was in Legion and is worth giving a go in Mythic Plus. A common question I get asked is, what race should I make my priest? When it comes to rating, the answer is usually simple, whichever you want. Most of the races are within less than 1% DPS of each other, and it won't make a major difference if you're a Tauren with War Stomp, or a Night Elf with 1% haste or crit depending on the night-day cycle, and Shadow mode. In Mythic Plus, that sentiment is mostly echoed, but there are a few races who I think have slightly better utility than the rest. Let's start with the Alliance races. The far and away #1 choice for Alliance is the Lightforged Draenei. Their racial Light's Judgment is super powerful if used in AoE. It's pretty mediocre for single target though. You can often expect this ratio to be 4 to 6% of your overall damage in a dungeon if you use it effectively, making it stronger for Mythic Plus than any other ratio when it comes to output. Its secondary ratio is Light's Reckoning, big damage and healing and a small AoE around you on death. As a trade-off for these 2 damage dealing ratios, Lightforged Draenei do not have any passive stat bonuses. The second best race in my opinion is Human. There are a handful of annoying stuns in BFA that having every man for himself can be handy for. But unlike Lightforged, it's really not that far ahead of the other races when it comes to damage output. The Trinket is just a nice quality of life option. There's nothing worse than being stunned for 5 seconds near the start of your Dark Ascension Void form on an M+ boss and doing no damage for the rest of the fight. Dark Iron is also decent. Used in Fireblood to help dispel yourself or to gain a big intellect boost before a double eruption can be massive. The Horde races don't have a clear winner like Alliance, so you can really go for whichever one you like more. Berserking from Trolls can be strong when it comes to getting damage out, Blood Elves' Arcane Torrent can help dispel when mass spells on cooldown and you also get 1% crit, Goblin's Rocket Jump can be some clutch mobility with the 1% haste as well, War Stomp from Taurens can give some lockdown if your group is lacking. The choice is really up to you on which you like. Mostly, all the Horde ratios give something valuable. So, gearing. Gearing for Mythic Plus is a pretty easy thing to do. That's because you don't really need to worry about it. Just follow the same priority as you would for raid. That is, intellect beats haste and crit beats the other 2. As for trinkets, the one you use for raiding would do just fine in Mythic Plus also. Unused ones like the Ignition Mage's Fuse or First Mate Spyglass Maybe better as it gives you control over when the procs happen, and you can sync them up perfectly with your damage windows, but don't stress too much. I'll link a trinket sim sheet from the Warcraft Priest community down below. In the description, it'll be for raids, but it'll give you a decent idea of what trinkets are generally good to aim for. Azerite traits. There's a lot of options. To start, let's discuss the Outer Ring of traits. I haven't had the opportunity to experiment with all the traits yet, so for example, I don't know much about the engineering helms, so take what I say with a grain of salt. This is just from my experience and may change as the expansion goes on. There's also some sims that have recently come out from Warcraft Priest that say things kind of contrary to what I'm going to say here. I haven't had a chance to test what those sims say, so I'll leave a link down below and you can experiment with them yourself and see what you think is better. Death Throes is what I rank as our best Mythic Plus Azerite trait. It buffs Shadow Pain's damage significantly, and it turns Shadow Pain into our highest damage dealing ability through a dungeon. I recommend trying to get 3 of these traits. If you cannot get 3, Blightborn Infusion is a good backup trait. Previously, I would have recommended Laser Matrix as a good third option, but with its recent nerf, I don't think it's worth using anymore. I wouldn't recommend dropping a whole lot of item level on Azerite pieces for these traits. 15 to 30 item levels should be the cap. Any more than that, the intellect gains from higher pieces would definitely become more valuable. When it comes to the second ring of Azerite traits, I don't think there's a huge difference between them. The outer ring trait is more important, so don't stress too much. Traits like Unstable Flames and Overwhelming Power can be nice. I don't really rate Azerite Globules. In theory, it sounds like a great AoE trait, but in reality, the procs split among the targets in the pack and you end up having multiple targets with 1 to 2 stacks, and rarely any actually hitting the 3 required to do damage. The third ring, they're just defensive traits. You can pick whatever you prefer. I prefer the Praetor's trait and Longstrider, but there are plenty of options, just don't pick the bad ones. The talents of Shadow in Mythic Plus are pretty cookie cutter. There's only a few talents that should change based on key or how your tank pulls. At the level 15 row, you should take Shadowed Void. It's better, more reliable insane generation than the other 2 talents, and you also prefer to be casting Mind Seer rather than Mind Flay, so Fortress of the Mind is even weaker. At level 30, you can take either Body and Soul or Sand Lane. It's a mobility versus a bit of extra healing. It's really personal preference, but it may come down to the dungeon and the affix combination also. I prefer Body and Soul, but I know some people who really love the 25% extra healing Sand Lane gives from Empyrean Embrace, as well as the reduced cooldown. Level 45 row is between Misery or Dark Void. There's a big discussion about which is better between the 2 talents. Dark Void excels in dungeons with big packs, while Misery is decent in dungeons with smaller pools. Personally, I prefer Dark Void over Misery because of its synergy with Death Throes. While Misery, by the time you have all your dots up, there's a risk your Shadowed Pains begin to fall off. While with Dark Void, you can use it just before Void Eruption and are able to maintain the dots for a longer time, while manually applying Vampiric Touch when necessary. Play around with both and see what you prefer. I don't think there's really a big difference in overall between them. From the talents available at level 60, you should take either Last Word or Psychic Horror. Which one you choose should depend on the dungeon. In general, when it comes to this row, just don't take Mind Bomb, it's really bad, it's just a waste of a talent. At level 75, there's only one clear winner, and that's Shadow Crash. I've tried both the other talents, and Crash beats Auspicious Spirits every time. As for Shadowed Death, it was surprisingly close to crashing King's Rest, but not really anywhere else. The level 90 row is pretty dead, so take Mindbender. Bender is the only useful talent in that row, and it does a lot of damage for a single use ability. At level 100, take Dark Ascension. A second on-demand eruption is big burst potential, and it gives you some nice control over when your AoE actually happens. So, we've gone over what races to play, what Azerite traits to get, generally how to gear, and what talents to use. It's time to go over how to actually play Shadow in an AoE scenario. It does slightly differ depending on if using Misery or Dark Void. We'll start with how and when to use Mind Seer. Simply, it replaces Mind Flay when there are 3 or more targets, and replaces Shadowed Void when there are 5 or more. The priority for AoE is as follows. While things are being grouped up, cast Vampiric Touch, Shadowed Void, and Mindbender to generate Insanity. Crash once things are stacked up appropriately and on cooldown from there on. Continue casting Vampiric Touch, Shadowed Void, and Mind Seer until around 60 Insanity if Dark Void. If Misery, continue to 90 Insanity. It's optimal to use Dark Void around 60 Insanity in order to get to 90 quickly and gain access to Void Bolt to maintain Shadowed Pain. If the pack isn't going to live long enough for Shadowed Pain to fall off, use Dark Void earlier. It's more important to get that dot tick in and the spell on cooldown than risking his dying before you can do damage to them at all. At 90 Insanity, if things are grouped up properly, use Void Eruption. On most packs, it's beneficial to use Dark Ascension right after Void Eruption is cast. It gives more burst AoE and gets on cooldown sooner for more uses across the dungeon. Void Form length doesn't really matter in dungeons. Cast Voidbolt on cooldown to maintain dots, and cast Vampiric Touch on mobs that will live for a decent amount of time. Over 10 seconds is what I go off. Try not to let Shadow Pain fall off, keep it up as much as possible. From there, just continue to use Voidbolt on cooldown to keep dots up. Mind Steal, Shadow Void where appropriate, crash on cooldown, and continue that until the fight is over. There is a moment where it might be beneficial to idle for a few seconds to try and sneak another eruption off on a pack. It rarely happens, and it's your call on whether to do it or not. One thing I forgot to mention is that with Death Throes you gain 5 insanity per trait when a mob dies with Shadow Pain. It's a good idea to try and fall out of Void Form just before mobs start to die, so you can generate insanity for the next pull with a trait, rather than have it wasted staying in a pointless Void Form. That's generally all there is to the Shadow Priest AoE rotation. Most of it comes down to experience, figuring out how long things are going to live, whether they're worth casting Vampiric Touch on, cooldown management, things like that. You'll pick it up by just playing. That about wraps things up for this video. If there's any questions you have, or things I've forgotten, or if something you disagree with, leave a comment down below and we can have a discussion. As always, please like the video and subscribe if you like what I do. Feel free to stop by my Twitch. My schedule is a bit messy at the moment with Ray interfering in my usual times, but if you happen to catch me live, come say hi. You can get updates on when I'm live on both my Twitter and my Discord community. The links are all in the description down below. Good luck with reaching your Ray.io Dreams expansion, and I hope this has helped you.